Welcome to Momentum Investing, property investing made easy. One of the world's top podcasts on property investing, bringing you the top experts in the field so you can learn firsthand what it takes to create passive income and take control over your financial future.
How do you design a property for the highest possible rents, returns, and valuations? Welcome to the Momentum Investing podcast, where we interview top experts from all over the world to help you grow your property portfolio as quickly as possible. My name is Daniel Wood. I'm one of the founders of Momentum Property Education and your host for today's episode, where we are interviewing none other than Jessica Olsson-Zabel, one of the top interior designers in all of UK. She's worked with both retail owners and with property investors, so she knows exactly how to position your property to get the highest possible valuation when you're selling, or the highest possible value when you're renting, which is an incredible skill. In this episode, she walks us through every single step that you need to take, from finding the deal all the way through getting it rented out, sold, and refinanced. So this is a very exciting episode. I recommend you to have notes ready, because we're going to go into details, which is something we always try to do in the Momentum Investing podcast. Our goal is to bring you these top teachers from all over the world to teach you what it takes to become more successful in property. Make sure you subscribe to the Momentum Investing podcast so that you don't miss any of our shows. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because on Mondays we also have a finance update where we update on what's going on in the economy and how do you position yourselves to be successful, as well as our Saturday Passive Income Mastery, where we cover subjects such as the 25 ways to fund a property deal and 5 passive income ideas that you can use in 2021. So we got a lot of powerful episodes out there for you. Now let's get into this one. Let's hear what Jessica has to say. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll see you on the other side. Hi, and welcome to the Momentum Investing podcast. I am super excited to be here again with Jessica Olsson-Zabel. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much, Daniel.
We are going to dissect exactly how a professional interior designer and investor goes about doing a project. So how do you kind of plan the refurb? How do you project manage the refurb? And how do you manage the design and make it look that gorgeous as only an interior designer can, without the budget going through the stratosphere? So how do we get the best of both worlds? So yes, Jessica, welcome to the show. And yeah, please start us out from the beginning. How do you go about planning and putting together one of your projects?
Yes, okay. Yeah, so going from private home interior design to investment design is a massive difference. So I used to be in private home design. So you have bigger budgets, and clearly as an investor, we can't spend those sort of budgets. So the first thing I do is to think about, depending on what sort of area the investment is. So if it's a room rental, for example, I always think about storage. That's my main first bit. I think about, where can people store all their stuff? They have one room where they're going to store all their stuff in it, and how we can utilize every single little cranny in that room to make it practical. So that's my first aim. And this is just very me, because I'm sure most designers don't do it like this, but I literally have cut out little shapes that I move around in the space. So I have my floor plan and I move it around to figure out exactly by scale to where I want everything.
Very cool. So you're literally sitting there with your own little miniature map, putting the furniture and the ensuite and everything and moving it around.
Yeah, that's literally what I do. And I know that that's probably what people did 30 years ago, but I am a little bit old fashioned with my way I do design. Okay. But it works for me. Okay. So, literally I sit down and I have my scales to scale drawing, and I start working out where everything is going, so I can plan all the electrics, all the lighting, and size of bathroom, because as we all know, for example, room rental, it's all about maximize the space inside of the rooms, so people get as much square meterage as possible on those rooms. If we're talking about buy to lets, or if we're talking about holiday lets, it's all about how many bedrooms you can get out of things, and how you can utilize and get more than one seating area, for example, that you can sit in the kitchen, or if you have a dining and you can sit in the lounge, different areas to socialize in, basically. So I look at all of these things and I go from floor to floor and I figure out best layout and how we can maximize the wow factor without spending heaps of money.
Right. So
And
you're trying to, as little as possible, move walls around. You're trying to maximize the current layout to get as many spaces and areas as possible.
yeah, and if not possible, we will move walls and so on. But I always try, first of all, to utilize what we have, so we don't have structural issues.
Right. Yeah, because exactly as you were saying with a home, if I'm designing my home, yes, I'll let you blow out every single wall and build it perfectly. But when I'm investing, well, that might be nice and it might help me get my rents up by 10%, but if it raised my cost by 40%, well, maybe not so attractive.
Yeah, that's it. So it's all calculated risks, right, and calculated budgets and so on. And then I always do a quick calculation, because I did a lot of project management in London before I became an investor. So I have a very good clue to pricing within building and so on. So I sit down and I do rough calculations how everything should be if it's on the max.
Right.
And we start doing a schedule of work as soon as we know the layout, and schedule of work, so we can get quotes in from builders. And we usually do minimum of 3 builders.
Right.
Even.
And so what point there do you bring in the builder? It's when you've formalized your design, including electrics, lighting, floor layout, design, and everything. So you have that view in mind, and that's when you reach out to a builder.
Yeah, kitchen design, preferably. Not always the case, but it should really be designed before, the layout, at least I have where it's going, maybe not always the design exactly, but yeah, so the layout. And also if we work with an architect, which we do more and more, it's easier that way, because they go in and they do all the measuring up, and they can do all the structural bits, and they know where everything is going in the walls and so on. So I find that that's an easier route to take, even if it's a little bit more expensive, because you're using an architect. For me personally, gives you peace of mind.
So if you're moving a wall, oh, the roof isn't going to fall in.
Yeah, it's actually with everything. I find it's peace of mind to have an architect to draw up everything, because I'm now an investor and I'm an interior designer. So I spend a lot of time finding, if we have 3 or 4 projects on the go at the same time, I'm a little bit too busy to sit down and do all the structural stuff, even if I could do that. Right. It's not on the cards anymore, so to speak.
Right.
So I find it's great to use an architect, and even in the beginning, because they more or less should get it right. You always have to double check, I must say, because it's not always the case. But so I work with that, and lately we have also started getting the schedule of work from the architect, so I don't do that anymore, or my business partner. So a lot of times we just leave that over now to the architect to write the schedule of work. Schedule of work is where you write down precisely what's going in every single room and every single build, down to the material and so on. So it's easier to get an accurate quote.
Because then you take that schedule of work and you give that to 3 different builders, and they know exactly, we're moving this wall X feet, we're doing this with the electrics, we're doing this with the lighting, we're doing this with the kitchen, the bathroom, and everything else.
Yeah, and it's also for peace of mind. Anyone that has worked with tradespeople know that there's a lot of times issues and who said what and what was what. So with a schedule of work, less can go wrong.
Yeah.
So
It's easier. You have something to point back to and say, hey, this is what the quote was based on.
Yeah.
Here's the schedule of works. Where is the question mark?
Yeah, exactly. So it makes it easier. And if there was an issue, you have that to point at, as you said. So that we put in there, we get the quotes, and then clearly choose.
Yeah.
And
I'm guessing you don't go purely by price. You're looking at a quality versus price kind of and do an evaluation there.
yeah, I mean, in my case, pardon me, in my case, I go with my intuition.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm an intuition person, so I sense who we should go with. And in the case of working, I have a couple of different business partners. And depending on who I work with, it's down to me, really. It's usually down to me anyway, actually.
Well, that's why people partner with you, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
because you take care of that part.
Yeah,
All
exactly.
right. So what comes next? So we've so far you've done the design, you've had the architect come in and really work through the structural, create the schedule of works, you've put it out to the builders, you've got 3 different quotes, and you've chosen the one that basically your intuition said this is the one to go with on this project.
Yeah.
What happens now?
Yeah, I should also say that before that, I do choose. So the layout is chosen, and I also choose colors of walls, or if there's going to be wallpapers, again, depending on if it's a room rental, so a HMO, or if it's buy to let, if it's a flip, depending on what it is, how much I can spend on it. So on my portfolio, my hospitality portfolio, I spend more money. I spend quite a bit more money on those units, right? So we're talking about 20K plus compared to a buy to let that I would spend on that, 30,000 more at times or so.
Right.
So I have all that down. So when we're done with the building part, usually I like to do everything correctly. I'm very much for good quality. I'm not one of the investors or designers that like to skimp on finishes. I don't like it, because I believe that we're paying double whammy in the long run for not doing it properly. I'd rather pay a little bit more and have it done properly, so it doesn't fall apart after the first year.
Yeah. So you're going to make a bigger profit because it's well done, and you're going to have less things break down over time, reducing your costs.
Yeah. So if there is old plaster and so on, I will take it off. We will go back to brick if we need it and so on. We will take off old plaster and spend the time prepping the space before we redo it, just to make sure that everything is fine. And another area that I like to go into more and more is the environmental impact. So more and more we work with eco sort of paints and insulations, the right insulations, and even companies that are into the environmental impact.
Right. That's awesome. I mean, and that's something that's very popular in other countries, as both of us are from Sweden. Here, that's a big part. In the UK, it's starting to gain a little bit of traction, but still is probably a decade behind the Nordics.
Yeah, I think it's probably more than a decade. Like 30 years or so.
Yeah, something like that. So, all right. So now when you've planned all this out, the builder, I'm guessing, starts their work. And how do you make sure that they're, on time, on schedule, on budget?
Right. So this is, again, I used to project manage, but I invest mostly far from where I live. I live in London, in England, and I invest up north, for example. So as a designer and as an investor, I found it was too hard. It was very, very stressful to try to project manage that far away. Maybe it's your full-time occupation. I can see that people can travel all over the country and do that. But so I've given that part up. So we do hire a project manager these times. So again, it's an extra cost, but it's got to be done because it's a vital ingredient in getting it right.
Well, someone's got to be there to oversee. I mean, those who've heard mine and Gisella's background know that we got ripped off really bad when we were starting out. And a lot of that was because builders were unsupervised.
Yeah, I same with me, Daniel. I was in the same boat as you. I was ripped off in the beginning, exactly the same, and lost thousands upon thousands of pounds. And
I agree. Definitely hire project manager. It makes such a difference.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And as we all say, that building a great team, trades team is vital. It's very hard to find good tradespeople, though. So if you find them, keep hold of them.
Yeah, that loyalty will pay off. So all right, so you work that project through, you have a project manager help you. Do they then, where do you get involved again for the design, so to speak? How much do you have to do after all this planning work?
It's throughout, because it's not always exactly according to plan. It doesn't matter how much you think you can plan on a plan drawing, what it's going to look like. Yeah. Sometimes when you start pulling down things, you start realizing, well, we have this here, we can't move it, and especially because we're working with older buildings a lot of times, right? So you'll have issues in the walls, or there is a water pipe, or there's something bursting, or there is issues with some structural bit and so on. So you have to change. So you always have to be there. Sort of, I usually go on site a minimum every second week, right, and check, right? And I go back and we reassess what we need to do and so on. And also the light. So as a designer, I go in and say, if you're there in the daytime and you're there in the evening, you can see how the light is falling in the room. And sometimes I change the color scheme, for example. That's a big one for me.
How much there do you involve that original architect to come back in? Do they help you with those updates, or do you manage that?
No, I manage it. So after we have had the architect on board, I manage the rest of that.
Right. Yeah. So any tweaks to the original architect plan, you handle yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Well, let's take a different turn here now, because most of us listening to this are not interior designers ourselves, but obviously we'd love to have kind of at least a portion of those results. So how would you recommend us, especially us being 1,000 miles away, how do we go about it to have the same kind of results that you have, where we maybe can't visit ourselves every second week? We don't have, well, take me, I have a defect color site, so I'm definitely not doing the color schemes in the property. How do we get that result that you're getting without having to have your skill set?
See, my recommendation, and I do this a lot for other investors, is to have, if you're starting out, if you're quite new to investment and so on, I would say hire someone like me. And I'm not saying me per se, but I'm saying hire someone that is visual and they can help out in the visual journey the first time at least, right? So they can provide a cookie cutter sort of style, cookie cutter meaning a style that you can keep throughout. So for example, if you're building a buy-to-let portfolio, you can take that look and implement
have it as your standard kind of look throughout.
So maybe you just need to utilize a designer one time and pay the price, so to speak, because we're not that cheap. But we do help out a lot. So I think to utilize it once to get that cookie cutter, and then just have that designer tweak it for the next time, because the layout will be slightly different. And also that's the same with an architect. If you do start using an architect, maybe you don't use it so much for buy to let, because a lot of times it's quite box standard. You just renovate it and then someone moves in,
Yeah.
or you just change some colors and so on. So it's not so expensive. But if you do use an architect, try to stick with the same one.
Yeah. So you build up a team with an architect, an interior designer, and a project manager, and these will generally be completely separate people.
Yeah.
And then well, first project, a little more expensive because you're getting your look and feel. But after that, you can basically copy paste it for project number 2, and then ask them to like, hey, can you tweak this for this project?
Yeah. So you have a totally different, it's just a consultation fee for the second one usually. So it's just tweaking.
Yeah. So I would say, look, this is what we did the first time. This is what we're doing the second time.
Yeah.
What do you think? What changes do we need to make? And you might sit down an hour with each and get some feedback and thoughts.
Yeah.
And well, or with the architect there, of course, I'm guessing you would still need to have them do a full schedule of works anyway. So that would be the kind of constant fee that's coming through.
Yeah, and the architect, you can't really get away. If they're going to do a plan for you, if they're going to draw it out, they're going to charge you the same each time, because it's still the same amount of time they have to put into it.
Right. Yeah, because it's a different layout, different room sizes, new measurements and everything.
Yeah.
So
at least if you do full renovations. Yeah. Again, if we go back to buying a buy-to-let where you have 2 bedrooms upstairs, you have a lounge and kitchen downstairs, there's not much else you do with it. So
no, you make it look nice, you paint it, and then you leave.
Yeah.
So then essentially you bring in your interior designer to just tell you what to paint.
Yeah. Or if you want it furnished, you can have the interior designer. Like in my case, I do staging as well. So staging means that you go in and you set it up for an investor, for example. So I do that for a lot of foreign investors. I go in and set up space for them. So
yeah, put in all the tables and the flowers and everything so that people, when they come and do the viewing, it looks gorgeous.
Yeah. Or if it's a holiday let, so people can come in and take professional pictures of it, and it gets rented out to the highest possible amount of money.
Perfect. All right. So I think that kind of summarized it. So essentially our process is get an architect and an interior designer to help create the plan, get a schedule of works, bring that to the builders, have a project manager, project manage the builder, and either get involved yourself or let that interior designer be involved throughout the process and make sure that the design gets updated and tweaked where it needs to be updated and tweaked.
Yeah. I think also for foreign investors, since that's what
the bulk of our listeners are, yes.
Yeah, that's it. It's that you have to trust the journey that you have with your designer on site. It doesn't fully matter. You're not going to live in it. So sometimes we have a little bit too much input, and it's a lot of tweaking, and it's a lot of back and forth. But really, in the grand scheme of things, you just have to trust that people can get on with it and get you a design that works for this country as well. Because in Sweden, we have much higher standards. So we have to really, and also we have much more techniques, and even with how you build a bathroom, or what you do is to prep a bathroom and so on. And with the Swedish investors, they get all like, no, it has to be tanked, and you have to do this and you have to do that. And that's not the way to do a bathroom. And can we try it the Swedish way? It's like, yeah, we can try it the Swedish way, but it depends on how much you want to pay for this, right? Yeah. Because here our renovation costs in this country are this big. In Sweden, the renovation costs of this, they're enormous.
Oh, it's a completely different ballgame. I mean, when we talk about what we refurb a whole property for, like an 11-bed HMO, that's the bathroom in a regular Swedish home. And, obviously, yes, that bathroom is to a completely different standard than the HMO, but...
And it lasts 30 years or 40 years, which it doesn't in this country. But the thing is, no one cares, because it will be time to change it anyway, or
Yeah, it will still not look, it won't look as modern in 20 years, so you still want to change it. So yeah. All right, cool. So if we want to learn more from you, if we want to get in more to the details and connect with you, how do we do that?
All right. So my you can find me on Facebook. I'm Jessica Olsson-Zabel, or you
And you
can
can find her there in the International Property Investors community. She's one of the most active in the community, usually on our top 10 contributors. So you'll find her there easily.
yeah, possibly not last month, Daniel. I'm sorry. I've been a little bit busy, but usually I'm there. Yes. So that, or also my website, which is Urban Rook, which is ROOK.co.uk.
And I'll add this link to the show notes so you find that easily.
Yeah. So you can go in and have a little look how I work and what I can do for you and so on. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us there, Jessica. And thank you everyone for listening. I got some exciting news in a moment, so stay with us. And thank you all for this time.
Oh, thank you so much, Daniel. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
You too. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you got a lot of value out of this interview here with Jessica. And you know, when you look at how an interior designer, how a property expert goes about organizing a property deal, it doesn't surprise why she gets these higher valuations. If we start using this as well, we will also get the same kind of results. So make sure you start implementing, and make sure you are subscribed now to the Momentum Investing podcast and to the Momentum Property Education YouTube channel, because every single week we come out with experts, videos, and interviews where you can learn how to take your property journey to the next level. Next week, next Thursday, we have an episode coming out with none other than Pip Stellick. Pip has taught people all over the world, thousands of investors. He has seen what works, what doesn't work, what is the difference between those who are successful and those who are not. And in this episode, he shares what he's learned from the last couple of decades of property investing to help you take your property investing to the next level. So I'll see you next week. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I'll see you soon.